Hey guys, this is Hayes with CheatSheetPros.com. Today is May 31st, 2022, and in this video we're going to take a look at some under-the-radar DFS stacks for today. In this video I'm going to bounce through the MLB cheat sheet and kind of show you some of the things that jump out at me and what I'm looking at. And I apologize, I haven't been able to provide a lot of content recently. I've been working 50 to 60 hours a week for the last month. We've been extremely busy. Summer's kind of my busy time, so I'm off all week. The family and I, we rented a house down in Arkansas and went down there for the weekend and got back. So this is the first day where everybody's gone at camps and work, and I just have the day to myself to do some sports and props, and so I was excited to get the sheets up today. I posted the sheets today in the free group as well, and I also put the PGA cheat sheet for the Memorial in the free group as well. If you want to play with it, take a look at it. I'm going to try to dive into some of that content. But let's go ahead and take a look at some DFS stacks. So if you followed us or you've been around a while, you kind of understand the basics, the layout of the MLB cheat sheet. We talk about that in a lot of tutorials. A couple pictures that I want to look at today that kind of jump out at me. When you're looking at DFS, let me go ahead and get this a snipe here so I can write on it. And so you can blow this sheet up, and I think we're back up to like the last 50 days fantasy points. So I was going to stop at 30, but I just kind of kept it going. So some of the pictures you look up here, yes, you have Gosman and Lore and Giolito, and they're all in this 10K, upper 9K range. And yeah, they're fine to use, but if you want to find someone with a little bit of value, Martin Perez is someone that jumps out at me, and he's a lot cheaper on DK. He's only 8,900. And I mean, he's got a solid start. He's been 22 plus DK points, 4 starts in a row, and 25 plus in 3 starts, and even has a 35 point start. So that's over 3.5x here. So that's a really good value. And then Christian Javier, I love this guy. Oakland struggling right now, and he's cheaper on FanDuel than he is DraftKings. DraftKings, he is semi-high, but he's got 30 and 27 in his last 2 starts, so he has a good 3x upside. Urias, he's been doing well. He's got a good matchup against Pitt today. Cheaper on DraftKings at only 9,100. I would be worried a little bit about his innings. The Dodgers have a really good bullpen, so if they yank him, I'm not shocked. He has a couple lower starts here. I'd probably go back and look and see maybe he threw out of the pen or in a relief role here. But if he gets, 6 innings, he has pretty good upside as well. But I think Perez and Javier are the kind of mid-9 and below 9 pitchers that you can go with. Some of the other ones down here, when I'm looking at it, Syndergaard's got 2 of 3 good starts. He has a 27 and a 23, and then had a bad start here. Wainwright, kind of up and down, nothing amazing. Waka had good stats when I was looking at it, and he's going up against Cincy. Has a couple rough DK points, so I'd want to look. See, Snell's returning today from the DL. Castillo's kind of up and down, and then all these guys are kind of up and down. You can take a shot with them for GPP, but Perez and Javier are the 2 that I like, and I like taking a shot at Urias as well. I like Junis. Can't believe Kansas City let him go. So he's got a 20, a low start, a 10, a 13. So he's someone that we can kind of take a look at. So let's go ahead and take a look at our DFS stack. So one of the things that we want to do is I always look at the bet trends here to kind of see who's hot, who's not. One of the things that jumps out at me looking at this team average, this is for the season, team batting average versus the last 3. You have the biggest jump here, which is Texas. You can see they're red hot right now. They're batting 234 on the season as a team, but they're up to 330 over the last 3 games. So that's a huge jump in the radar. So that's someone we're going to take a look at. They're also 29 and 18 on the run line. And then we come over here. Toronto, they've been doing really good. They're up to 309 over the last 3. Mets up to 314. Colorado up to 291, but they've got huge home road splits, so that's something to take a look at. Teams that are struggling that we probably want to be careful with. One is Philadelphia. They've lost 4 in a row. They're batting 168 as a team. Houston's starting to slide a little bit. batting 229 as a team and 173 over the last 3 games, so maybe look at an under there. LAA, they've lost 5 in a row. I looked 4 of those games, I believe it was a 1-run game, so they were really close against a good team, but they're still batting 283, so don't worry about them. But let's go ahead and take a look. So when we go over here to the Stacker tab, let me scroll over here a little bit for you. You can kind of see we've got a explainer over here that'll kind of tell you these mini diamond stacks are ones that I would kind of take a look at. They meet a lot of qualifications, and this hot team versus mid-tier pitcher. It's not a perfect science, but it kind of gives you a place to start. Some of the ones that we're going to take a look at. So first off, you need to figure out, what are you playing in DFS? Are you playing a cash game, which we consider like a double up, a triple up, something like that, where the top 50% are going to double their money? Then it really doesn't matter. You can go chalk. But if you're playing a GPP with thousands of people, let's say 5 or 10,000 entries, you want to avoid the chalk and find something sneaky that's lower owned. And the first way you can do that is looking at the Vegas numbers. So this is always sorted by Vegas projected runs. These 4 games don't have a total out yet, so they're down at the bottom. So your chalk's going to be these top. So typically what a lot of DFS people are going to do is they're just going to go up here and they're going to say, okay, stack the Mets today because they're projected for the most runs. Well, everybody can see that. Everybody's going to go for that. I do like the Mets for a stack today. They're projected the highest right now in Vegas against Corbin, so they're probably going to be pretty chalky. Atlanta, Philadelphia, we just saw how much Philadelphia was struggling. They're projected to be chalky, so I would fade that. Dodgers are always solid over here. Runs a game. Last 2 weeks, they're averaging 6.2, batting 279, monster WRC plus and power rating. So the Dodgers are always solid, but as you can see here, they're going to be expensive as well. When we look at the cost of your stacks, we look at the 5 highest and then the 2 to 6 highest to kind of get a range. And if you haven't seen this before over here on the stack tab, I put a breakdown when you're building. So if you're averaging over 5,000 per hitter, that's really expensive. You need to have some value fill-ins and value pitching. 46 to 49.99, so 4,600 to 5,000. You can build in that range. It kind of limits you a little bit. Your sweet spot here is basically 43.50 to 46. You can build really good lineups. Most of the GPPs that I've been in the top 5 in, I was kind of in these 2 ranges here. When you get under 43.50, you can get 2 stud pitchers. So if you want 2 9K average pitchers, that's kind of what you want to look for. And then if you get a stack that's under 4,000, you can really load that lineup. You can usually get 2 stud pitchers. You can also get stud people in key spots and lineups in your other spots. So these are really what we're looking for. Anything that's less than 4,600 is key. I don't mind going over it, but I try to stick in this 4 to 44 range. That's usually a pretty good spot, especially if you want to go safe on pitching. And so you can see kind of the cost here. And this just runs off the salary. And then based on the value projected, it gives you like a percentage value of what you're going to get. So this is a good spot you can kind of look. Now when we're flipping through here, you can see the Dodgers we talked about. Yes, they're fine, but they're 55 to 5,700 for a 5-man stack. It's projected well. So value-wise, 77%. It's not very good. You're probably not going to win in GPP unless they absolutely explode. Same thing with the Mets. They're going to be chalky. They're expensive. You're looking at 47 to 5,200, 89% value, so a little better. Philadelphia is a little bit cheaper, a little more value, but we can see here they've really been struggling. So what you want to do when you're looking at this projected runs is find some teams down here that can pop. These are going to be a little lower owned. A lot of the basic people that just look off Vegas projected runs are going to go off of it. You can see here this Detroit game 2. It has a really cheap value, great lineup, but again, second games of doubleheaders are usually not in a lot of DFS slates. So one of the ones, I have 3 that I'm going to give you today that I want to talk about. The first one is Milwaukee, and it's going to be the highest one that we have. Here you can see we have 108% value, and this range is 35 to 38.80. I was shocked at how cheap this stack was. This is less than 4K per hitter. We have the wind blowing out at 13 miles an hour against Justin Steele, who's kind of a mediocre pitcher. He can be good, but he can struggle as well. It's projected at 4.8, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's tied for the 6th game, so it's down the list a little bit. So that's one. We like the wind on it. Looking at Justin Steele, if we're just going to look at a real quick stat line for him, we can see that he's got an ERA of 5.4 this year, 4.26 last year. The 8th ranked bullpen behind him. So it is a little bit of a tougher matchup, but I love how cheap it is, so we can take a shot there. Milwaukee is going to be one. The second one we're going to slide down here is going to be Arizona, surprisingly. So when I'm looking at Arizona, what I see here is they're 10th in our last 14-day power rankings. They're not too bad, 4.7 runs per game over the last 2 weeks. That's going to put them up in this range. But Vegas only has them projected at 4 runs. So look how far down the list they are. So these are where we want to try to target some teams. And I love the price point, $4,000 to $4,250. 85% value. It's cheap. We can do a good build here. It's in a dome. We don't have to worry about weather. It's going up against Charlie Morton. So when we're taking a look at him, he was really good last year. He had a 3.34 ERA, 3.31 xFIP, and allowed a 2.03 average. He was solid. But this year, he's got a 5.28 5.28 ERA, 4.74 xFIP, and allowing a 2.77 average. A good bullpen behind him, which is one of the reasons Vegas doesn't have them rated real high. Holy moly. Big thunder shake there. And then when we look over here at this bet trends, we had talked about looking at Texas, how hot they are over the last 3 games. So Texas is going to be the third one that I'm going to take a look at. And when we look at them, they're down here at 4.1 runs per game. They're in a dome. It is up against Tampa, who usually doesn't give up a lot of runs. And Yarborough, it's kind of a mediocre pitcher. ERA of 4, xFIP of 4.97. I like targeting pitchers that have a higher xFIP than their ERA because they're a little less owned. Decent bullpen behind him. That's one we want to take a look at. So this is kind of how I use this stacker tab, and I flip through it. Now my favorite tab is this daily stacks tab. Let me make sure you can see all this on your screen. And this has everything you need on it. And honestly, if you don't look at anything else, I flip through this game by game, and this is what I'm going to look at. If you're doing fantasy, you're doing sports betting, everything you need is right here. It's got all of your pitchers, home, away, righty, lefty. It's got all your Vegas betting trends. It's got your recent game logs, win, losses, scores, dates. We have records. We have our custom power rankings right here in the middle. We have the projected lineup. When you open up this sheet, it also reaches out and grabs the lineup, and this will flip over to yes when this lineup is confirmed. You can see the handedness of the hitters, the averages, strikeout rate. You can see their stats. We even do a custom grade, which you can see the red hitters are good for stacks. And then you can see their fantasy points, last 7, last 2 weeks, last 2 weeks ceiling, salary, any BVP data versus the pitcher. Then you can see who they're facing, current stats, and we do everything. We do lefty-righty splits. We do home or road splits. These are the totals, bullpen. I mean, all the information you need is right here. And then we got the little fantasy point tracker, so you can see kind of if you're going to play Perez, you can see kind of how he's done fantasy-wise. Well, actually, he's actually been pretty solid. Look at that, 20, 11, 12, 8, 3, 7, 12, 11, 10, 5. He's been pretty good. So you can kind of pick out your players. But I use this for stacks, betting, props. Props, you can look at strikeout rates over here. So this is what we're going to use to look at some DFS stacks for today. So the first one we're going to take a look at that we talked about is Milwaukee. So let me scroll down here. We're going to take a look at them. So Milwaukee, you can see we've got it projected a little bit lower, but I wouldn't worry about that. You can see they've won the last 3 games. They've also beat the Cubs twice. They've scored 3, 7, and 8 runs in the last 3. Cubs have been struggling here. They've lost 5 of the last 6 games, and they're down to 23rd in our last 10 power rankings. So for DFS stacks, when we're looking at Milwaukee, so we're facing Justin Steele. He's got an ERA of 5.4, xFIP of 3.7, which is a little bit better, but his whip is really high at 1.6. Typically, 1.1, 1.15 is about league average. If you get below 1, that's elite. 1.6 is really high. The one thing you can look at, it's a low amount of innings though, but he's given up a 214 batting average at home and 319 on the road, so he is better at home. So that's one thing to take into consideration. Looking at his lefty-righty splits, 282, 260. He struggles a little bit more to left-handed batters, but his ERA is still kind of the same on both sides, so not too worried about that. Last season, he was really good against lefties, but he only had 12 innings against them. And then, so when I'm looking at stacking, so the reason I like Milwaukee here, the pitcher's good. They typically haven't exploded, but it's cheap. So you can see here, if you're doing a top grade stack off our custom grade, it's $3,400 for a 5-man stack. If you're doing a top hitter stack, it's $3,480 for a 5-man stack. So what I would want to do is kind of break this down and look at it and see, who's good versus lefties, how people have been doing. This yellow-green, they've been good up and down the lineup. So Hiura, or however you say his name, he's only 3,100. He's doing well. Tyrone Taylor, I picked him up in fantasy. I think he had 2 home runs yesterday. He's been on fire. I don't mind using him. He's only 3,100. Yelich is the one that's been struggling, and he's the most expensive hitter at 4,800. McCutcheon's been decent. Urias has been good. So if I'm building this stack, I would probably start it with Urias right off the top, hitting in the projected 2-hole. He has a low 10% strikeout rate 10% strikeout rate. And he has good WOBA and ISO numbers versus left-handed pitching, and he's the highest grade hitter of the ones, so I'd start with him at 45. He's going to be the most expensive guy. You could put Yelich in there, but he's such a popular name, he's going to be pretty chalky, so I would probably drop down and do this like 4, 5, 6 with Tyrone Taylor and make sure you get Keston in there. And then you can put Brossi in there, or you could drop down and take Locane. Locane's only 2,300. Struggling right now versus left-handed hitters, but, gives you a little bit of upside. But that's one I would take a look at. Or if you just want to do the straight 1 through 4, skip number 5 and do 6, I like doing that as well. Couple different ways you could go on that one, but it's so cheap. Just try to build a lineup with that, and you've got so much money left. You can do a stud pitcher, and then you can fill in stud hitters everywhere else in your lineup. So Milwaukee is one of the ones that I like. The second one we're going to take a look at is going to be Arizona. So you can see Vegas only has them projected at 4 runs. We got them at 4.5, so a little bit better. They're kind of an up and down team, and one of the things that I like about this, I'm going to try to blow this up for you a little bit so you can see it. Let me see, view, home, view, zoom. So I think we have that at 75% so you can see it. So let's do 85%, see if we can blow that up a little bit for you. All right, so typically what we're looking at here is we have 4 red graded hitters. That is really good. So we have Rojas, we have Peralta, Varsho, and Pavin Smith. They've all been doing really good fantasy points the last 7. These two, Rojas and Peralta, they've got massive ceilings over the last 2 weeks. Rojas has a 44 DK point game, and Peralta has a 30 DK point game. And I love Peralta in this stack. Look at this. He's only $3,600, and he's got 11 at-bats versus Morton, and he has 6 hits. He's batting .545 off of him. It's not a lot of at-bats, but 6 for 11, you can kind of take a look at that and use that as opposed to someone that's, 1 for 3 or 0 for 0 against him. And we have a hot fantasy grade production for them. So looking at Morton, you can see last year we had talked about him on the Stacker tab. He had a 3.34 ERA, allowed a 2.03 average, so he was really good. This year, struggling a little bit. We've got 44 innings under him, so we have enough. We can kind of look at it. So he's got an ERA over 5, whip over 1.5, which that's red. That's really rough. And then he's allowing a 277 average. And we love this split to attack today. You can see his home road split. So at home, he's got a 3.91 ERA, which you can see here. A 1.26 whip, which is getting closer to average, and a 2.29 allowed average, which is pretty decent. But on the road, now given it's only 21.1 innings, but he has an ERA of 6.75, a whip of 1.83, and he's allowing a 322 batting average. So I love taking a shot at Arizona today where Vegas has them down. They've been doing good. Morton struggled on the road, so that's something I think we can take a shot at for a GPP. And then when we come down here and we kind of take a look at the fantasy point production tracker, you can kind of see who's been doing good, who's been doing bad. Here you can see Pavin Smith has a 18, 18, 24, so 3 of the last 6 he's done well. Varsho has struggled the last 3 games, so I'd probably go ahead and fade him. Slide down here looking at Rojas and Peralta, which are the 2 hottest hitters. Their ceiling games were 11 days ago, but you can see Peralta has got 12 and 10 over the last 2, so he's been doing decent. So this is someone to take a shot on, or one team to take a shot on, and let me get back here to the 75%. So Arizona is the second low-owned team that I like. The third one is going to be Texas, so let's go ahead and take a look at that one, and then we'll wrap this video up. So you can see Vegas has Texas projected at 4.1 runs. We have them at 4.8 runs. They rank second in our last 10 power rankings, which it's been hard for me to keep up with baseball this year with how busy I've been, but I was shocked to see Texas up there because they were projected to be one of the rough teams. And looking at the recent games, they've won, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4. They've won 5 of the last 6 games, and they've scored no less than 4 runs in those games. So they've put up 9, 5, 11, 8, 4, and 7 runs. So they're doing really well, and that was against Oakland. They put up 9 against Tampa Bay last night, which is something that we want to take account for. And so looking at Yarborough, or Yarber, yeah, however you say his name, he's a pretty decent pitcher. He's got a 3.98 ERA, so sub 4, but his xFIP's a lot higher. It's 4.97 in case you can't see this. So I like to attack pitchers that have a lower ERA because the average DFS player looks at ERA when xFIP is more of the true indicator of how the pitcher is actually doing. So people are going to look at him and say, oh, he's got an ERA of less than 4. I'm not going to attack him. But I'm looking at it saying, hey, he's got an xFIP of almost 5. I'm going to attack him. And then also, he only has 20 innings, but you can see his split here on the road. Average allowed 129 versus 333. Whip 0.89 versus 1.76. And then ERA jumps from 3 to 4.76 on the road. So we like that on the road. They do have a good bullpen, so it is a chance this flops, but I love the price. We're down in this $4,000 range. If you do the top grade stack, we're at 4,040. The top hitter stack, which are basically the hottest hitters, you get at 4,080. So this allows us to do a really good build. And then you can stick in here and just look at some of these guys. The first thing I do is I look at the grades. So I've got 4 guys in the red. So Garver, again, this lineup is not confirmed. So if he's in the lineup, he's someone that I want to look at. He has the highest ISO versus left-handed pitching at 375. He's doing really good in fantasy points, has a good ceiling. He's only 4,000, so that's someone I want to take a look at. Marcus Simeon, he is struggling this year, batting 197. He started to pick it up as of late, so he's doing a little better. But against Yarborough, he's only 3 for 16 with 4 strikeouts, so maybe that's someone that you fade. If someone else says, hey, I'm going to use Texas because they've been hot, I guarantee Simeon's going to be in there. And just remember, the average DFS person says, hey, I'm going to stack 1 to 4, 1 to 5, or 2 to 6. Those are the most popular stacks. So if you can find a way to flip one hitter, so maybe you say, hey, Simeon's struggling, especially versus left-handed pitching. He has an ISO of 0.088. So you say, hey, I'm going to fade Simeon. He's 4,200. You could even do like 1, 3, 4, 6, 7 and get these hot hitters. I would definitely get Calhoun. Actually, I'd put all 3 of these guys here. So your projected 5, 6, 7 hitters are the highest graded hitters in the lineup. So put those in there. So you can do 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could do 1, 3, 5, 6, 7. Heck, you could do 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. Any of these is going to get you a different lineup. One of the GPPs I won last year, it was just a $1 entry. First place was $1,000, but I had a Colorado stack, and when we got down to the last game, Colorado was a late game. There were 10 of us that were in the top 10, and we were moving around. Well, 8 of those lineups had the 1 to 5 hitters, and one of them had the 2 to 6 hitters. I was skipping the 2 guy because he had been struggling. He had a low strikeout rate, really similar to this, or a high strikeout rate. So I did like 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what ended up happening that allowed me to win that GPP is everybody had this number 2 guy in. He came up, struck out. Then we got hit, and then my 6 hitter hit a home run, and it pole vaulted me up into first place and ended up letting me take down the GPP. So as opposed to just doing a 1 to 5, really look around and see where you can be different, because you want to find a way that you can get to the top of that lineup. So definitely the 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to do some DK lineups tonight. I've got some time. I'm off all week, so I get to play a little bit. When we come down here for Texas, kind of taking a look at who's done well, the green is good. So I see a lot of green, which you can see these guys are coming off of a really good game. Cole Calhoun has 16, 17, 9, 8, 33. He's doing really well, so make sure he's in the lineup. We have a good run on Adolis Garcia, 17, 12, 14, and 10, and then a couple zeros. He came off on fire last year and then kind of struggled a little bit. I think pitchers started to figure him out and then went down. Corey Seager's always solid, 16 and 33 in 2 of the last 3. And see, we talked about Simeon here, which I have him on one of my fantasy teams, so I follow him quite a bit. So he basically was on the struggle bus through here, had 1 green game, everything else was kind of blah. But he's really been picking it up. He's got 20, 20, 28, 14, and 9. So if you want to use him, I don't mind it. I've got him in fantasy. And then Eli White had 24, but looking at this now, it was basically the 1 game prior to that. Look at him, 0, 2, 0, 2, 3, 0, 0. So I'd probably skip him. So even if you did like Simeon, Seager, and then did this 5, 6, 7 hole, that's a pretty good lineup, which I actually might do that tonight. I kind of like the way that looks in a build. But those are the 3 that I like to take a look at tonight. Now I'm going to flip over and take a look at some other research and try to get another video up. But I wanted to get this out and kind of show you guys how I look at the sheet, what I'm looking for, and where I'm trying to find my less contrarian stacks to build. So sorry this damn thing ran so long, but I'm glad to be back and get some content out. Later, guys.